teaching upstairs a couple times and all, so I've been out of the loop a little bit down here. So David's passing out some blank note cards. I'll give him some time to do that. All I'm going to ask is, we have 2 weeks left in this class. You can do what you want with this note card. You can throw it away, you can put your grocery list on it, or you can write a question on it and get it to me at the end of class. Any kind of question, and you don't have, it can be anonymous. Anything about this study in Ecclesiastes that has just been sitting in your head, or that wasn't answered fully, or was answered but you still have questions about it, or was never really addressed, whatever, right? Something about this class that you know you would like to get to before the class ends. We have 4 class sessions. Well, 3 after this one, because tonight's tonight. I've already got my sort of plan, I know what we're doing. But that's what this note card is for. So feel free to write something on it, get it to me, or give it back to David. He can get it to me. Because sometimes afterwards it's hard to find people around here. But I'll be glad to get a hold of. I would like to know those things. What questions about this book or a verse that we discussed that you left thinking, I don't know about that, or I'm still unclear about that. I'd love to know those kinds of questions, or even broader kinds of reflections on the class. So that kind of feedback is always really helpful, just to know what do people in the class, what are they still thinking about? What are their questions are still lingering or forming in their head? So tonight, it's Ecclesiastes 11 is where we're going to be. All right, I'm sorry. Give me just a second. I'm going to... Could you do me a favor? Go check the car. See if my glasses are in the car. Because this is going to be a challenging class if I can't read my notes or my Bible. And that's vanity of vanities. Didn't need glasses at all. Thank you, thank you. If it gets to that point, I may borrow one. I'll see if they're in the car. I was pretty sure I put them in my pocket, but they're not laying back there on the sound desk, are they, Charlie? No glasses back there? Okay. So be it. And Jeannie would offer me hers, but I'm not wearing yours. I'll suffer through class before I do that. All right, thanks, David. I appreciate it. Well, let's start with the prayer, and then we will get rolling here in chapter 11. Our good Father, we are grateful for this Lord's Day. We're grateful for worship that you gave us to give to you. It is for our good. We grow from it. We learn you from it. And we are grateful that we've been able to do that today, and that this evening we get to do it again, and we get to meet together to study from this rich book of wisdom. And we pray you to be with us in these minutes as we do that. Let us find your truth in it and be changed because of it. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so Ecclesiastes 11. We've been talking about this in the very beginning, these key words that are in the book. Vanity and under the sun and God are 3 biggies that come up over and over again. We've talked about this a lot. Everything is vanity. That's the perspective of the book. There's no value whatsoever in life when it's viewed as under the sun. But when we see God, that changes everything. That gives us, and so we've seen that repeatedly throughout the book. Right? He hits it really hard here at the end, but that's not the first time he hits it, is at the end. Right? It comes up throughout the book. And so chapters 1 through 10 really build to this main point. And starting in chapter 11, you get some really strong exhortations in the book. Sort of climaxes in chapter 12. But this call to do things. Not the first time in the book. Were they there? Oh, that's good. Thank you, sir. Not the first time we've had exhortation in the book. Thank you. But it's certainly the most intense. Understanding what we've talked about and what we've reflected on. Look, this is then what I do. This is what we do. And so we have actions here. So let's just read this starting in chapter 11 and verse 1. We'll just read the first. Maybe we'll just read the chapter. I don't expect it. We won't get to the chapter tonight, but let's read through it. Cast your bread upon the waters, for you will find it after many days. Give a serving to 7 and also to 8. For you do not know what evil will be on the earth. If the clouds are full of rain, they empty themselves upon the earth. And if a tree falls to the south or to the north, in the place where the tree falls, there it shall lie. He who observes the wind will not sow, and he who regards the clouds will not reap. As you do not know what is the way of the wind, or how the bones grow in the womb of her who is with child, so you do not know the works of God who makes everything. In the morning sow your seed, and in the evening do not withhold your hand, for you do not know which will prosper, either this or that, or whether both alike will be good. Truly the light is sweet, and it is pleasant for the eyes to behold the sun. But if a man lives many years and rejoices in them all, yet let him remember the days of darkness, for they will be many. All that is coming is vanity. And then we'll stop. Perhaps we'll get 9 and 10 on Wednesday. Those sort of seem to me to fit more with chapter 12, but we'll see how this goes. So it really builds to this point, which is decide to live in the reality day by day, knowing that God rules. That's really his point. And if I know that God rules, then my day-to-day life is a decision, and how I'm going to face that, and how I'm going to step into that, whether I'm going to step into it or not, or whether I'm just going to sort of sit back and float down the passive stream of life, or how I step into it. It's greatly shaped by my understanding of who God is. So let's talk about some of these principles, and then we'll move on from there. This is basically, chapter 11 and 12, a sustained call to make a decision, is what he's saying. Make a decision to live like this. So, cast your bread upon the waters, for you will find it after many days. All right, how is this verse best understood in light of chapters 1 through 10? That's a lot to reflect upon, but that's the background from this verse. This is a verse of exhortation. Cast your bread upon the waters. That's the call, the call to act that way. For you will find it after many days. So we've had weeks of chapters 1 through 10 discussions. So how would you explain this verse or comment on this verse in light of those chapters, or what we've learned from those chapters? And if that's too broad, just say, well, this is what up here, Josh. If you feel that's too broad, then just go with what you got at this point. Yeah, Mark?
Chapter 2, I got, empty. This reminds me of you gotta let go of it to gain it. That is, you gotta lose your life. He who loses his life will gain it. It's chapter 2, I think, was look at everything I was acquiring for myself. This is the opposite attitude, I think, of maybe generosity, or you gotta let go of things. You gotta cast it. The man who waters will be watered. Book of Proverbs. And time and chance happens to all. Mm-hmm. But don't be waiting for time and chance. Don't be paralyzed by time and chance.
Okay, good. And good connection to chapter 2 there too. As someone else, how do you explain this verse? Cast your bread upon many waters. Upon the waters, not many waters. Cast your bread upon the waters, for you will find it after many days. What's this verse about? Good, Harley's right there, ready for you.
I was cheating, I guess. I was skimming down here to verse 6. In the morning sow your seed, at evening withhold your hands. You do not know which will prosper. So just go ahead and do what your work needs to be done.
Right.
And it'll be paid back in time. So we've had some verses about trusting God. And then I think verse, maybe Bill focused on, God is in heaven, we're down here. Yeah. So we don't know the big picture, but you do the right thing, and over time it'll come back. If not, it's God's will.
Okay, good. There was a hand up here somewhere. Who was it? Shauna?
I think of it in when you're with your kids and you're like at the water and you're throwing bread in, and some fish grab the bread, some fish don't, and sometimes you see it go away. Maybe in a few days you find it. Same as you would give a piece of advice or talk about God's word. You might see it sink in with some, and others might be thrown back at your face or just kind of found, dispersed other places, not where you originally intended it. I don't know. That's kind of where I read it.
Okay, good, Shauna. No, I like that. Right up here, Harley. If we can get the mic down there. Yeah, there it is.
First Timothy 6, 6:18. I need my glasses changed.
I got some.
That the rich be good in why can't I do this? Let them do good, that they be rich in good works, ready to give, willing to share.
Good. Same principle there, 1 Timothy 6. Yeah, okay, yeah, Steve.
You know how somebody tells you something and you don't believe them? It's kind of like, if God tells you something, you go, oh, but it's God telling you that,
Okay.
right? When he talks about casting bread upon the waters, if I told you that if you cast bread on waters, you might catch a rainbow trout, and you're going, yeah, right. No, really, that's what we used to catch trout with, was bread. My point is God tells you things all the time, and your brain goes, is he really telling me the truth or not? Mm-hmm. You reap what you sow. Trust God, you will reap what you sow.
Okay. Which gets back to faith, right? Which is so much what this book is really about. Do I trust God to be sovereign and live life that way? Or am I pursuing fulfillment or value or meaning or some feeling of success some other way, right? So do I trust what God says about all this? All those great answers to this. And nobody did what I expected somebody to do, which is how I've frequently heard this verse used, which is financial. So for its application either to philanthropy or to business, which it, by the way, has application to philanthropy and business. And that's in some ways what 1 Timothy 6 is getting to, but not entirely. It's much broader than that. And that's what you all hit, I think, very well, right? It's how do you live life? What do I invest in life with whatever God has given to me? And yeah, I think the principle is exactly the way you all articulated it very well. That give life what I can give to it, in whatever form I can give to it. And God's going to bless that. Maybe not immediately. It may take many days, but that's going to come around. Those kind of blessings come around. Yeah, Hisham?
Yeah, there's a saying in Arabic, and it's very similar. It just says, do good and throw in the sea. The idea is you don't expect to see it come back to you, but it will, the verse tells us it will come back to you. So throwing something in the sea is like, okay, just forget about it. Do good, forget about it.
Right, and seed takes time, right? And that's implied in that same kind of Arabic proverb then. Yeah, great, Hisham. So you have this question, and I've heard this, although apparently maybe I'm the only one who's heard it used this way, because no one else has suggested this, or you're like, I know that's not all there is to it. Does this verse promise that generous people will gain more wealth if they give their money away? Or does it promise that misers will lose their wealth if they hold on to it? Is that what this verse is saying? No, that's not what this is saying. That's not what this is saying. It means if I'm generous with whatever money I have, does that mean I'm going to suddenly become wealthier? No, I may never become wealthier. But will I gain from that? Mark? Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I see you shaking your head, so I call on you.
There's always gain, and the miser always loses something far more valuable than wealth.
Good. Say that again, just so people can hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, the miser always loses something far more valuable than wealth, and the generous person always gains. And back to the last point, I think you had a great point. You're not always rewarded in the area that you put a lot of effort.
Right.
I know people that were great parents and their kids fell away. Yeah. And that can be like a punch in the stomach to you, like, they were fantastic parents. You're not always rewarded in the area that you put a lot of effort, but you will be rewarded.
Right. Great. It was back in chapter 5, I think, here, Ecclesiastes. Verse 13. There's a severe evil which I have seen under the sun, riches kept for their owner to his hurt. Right, to his hurt. So it may be, I become very wealthy by not sharing what I have physically, but I'm only going to wound myself. It could be I become very whatever by not sharing what I have in time or in emotional energy or in some ability God's given to me to whatever that ability is, whatever that is, leadership or listening or service. And if I withhold that, Solomon is telling you, you're going to hurt from that. If you give that away, you're going to benefit from that. And God makes sure. That's how that works. So, live life. Give yourself away is what this is saying. Give yourself away in whatever form you give yourself away. And in time, you are going to reap great benefit from that. Doesn't mean you're not going to be tired or hurt or have wounds along the way, but you're going to have great benefit. Give yourself away. That's what he's after. Same idea. Now, this is same idea in Luke chapter 6. Give, and it will be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over will be put into your bosom. For the same measure that you use, it will be measured to you. We most easily connect this to something financial or physical, but its application course is much broader than that. It's much deeper than that. It's give me, give yourself. And God's going to give back to you immensely. Shaken over, overflowing, pressed down, shaken, all that. Connie has a comment right in front of you.
Ultimately, it means the spreading of God's kingdom, enlarging His borders. I mean, that's the whole point of everything we do, or should be. And when we know that, when we give with that in mind, that will come back for sure.
Right. Good. And as we mature into that, that becomes increasingly valuable to us, doesn't it? There's more and more reward we receive by watching God's kingdom grow. And we mature into that. This is March Madness. I remember the fateful day. I think I've told the story in this church before. Remember the fateful day in 90 maybe, 91, the Leitner shot when Duke beat Kentucky in that game. How many of you remember, you know what I'm talking about? Exactly. Thank you. Amen. Preach it, sister. And I was watching that game with Jeannie. We were dating still at the time. We were at her parents' house watching that game, and it just knife in the heart. I have a UK wallet. I mean, that's, I was born in the semi-holy land of Kentucky. Right? So it mattered to me deeply. And when that game ended and someone said, so what do you want to do? And I just had to say, no. I've got to have a moment. This is. It just doesn't matter nearly that much to me anymore. It does. I still like it. If they win, great. If they don't, okay. But it just doesn't matter as much anymore. And that's probably a good thing. Right? We grow into that. And there are things over time that used to take more of my energy that just don't anymore. And consume resources that just don't, because they don't matter as much anymore. And there are things now that consume my time and resources that before consumed less of them because I've grown up. Right? I've matured into that. And I imagine in another 10 years, it's going to be still the same way. Right? There's going to be things that I will have grown further. And I think that's what this exhortation is getting us to, is look, invest in what matters. Because that's what's going to matter. And that ultimately is where the reward comes back to you. It's in things that really matter. And my bracket, probably like most of yours, is shot this year already with all the craziness going on. But that doesn't matter. There's far more things that are substantive. What's worth my time? What's worth my emotional energy? What's worth my money? What's worth putting in my head? Well, those things change as you mature and you grow up. And you say, this is not worth it. This is because it has a greater effect on God's kingdom. And we become more moved by kingdom growth and less moved by my ball team winning or losing. It just changes things. So great. Anybody know what sermon this is from, by the way, from Luke chapter 6? What sermon is this from? What do we call this? Luke chapter 6 is Jesus' sermon. It's Luke's version of the Sermon on the Mount, but just a little extra, free of charge. It's the sermon on it's known often as the Sermon on the Plain, or the Sermon on the Level Place. In Luke chapter 6, it introduces, and Jesus gathered a crowd on the level place, or on the plain. So just sort of an FYI, if you ever hear the Sermon on the Plain, it's Luke chapter 6, which is his version of the Sermon on the Mount. Which is interesting. Jesus probably preached that sermon more than once, you think? Yeah. I preached a sermon more than once. Did Steve preach the sermon more than one time? Yeah, that's how that works. Jesus probably did too. All right, so how do we find it after many days? You will find it after many, you sort of hit on this. He says, cast your bread upon the waters, for you will find it after many days. I think you all have sort of commented on that. And why after many days? You probably commented on that as well. Some of it's serendipity. Some of it's serendipity. Some of it, valuable things take time. Valuable thing takes time to develop. Seeds take time to sprout and grow and bear fruit. Yeah, Jan?
The more you're talking about it, the more this verse applies. It's Luke 14, verse 12 to 14. It's a parable.
Go for it.
I'll just read it.
Good. Please do.
And he said also to the man who had invited him, when you give a dinner or a banquet, do not invite your friends or your brothers or your relatives or rich neighbors, lest they also invite you in return and you be repaid. But when you give a feast, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed, because they cannot repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the just.
Great. It's a great verse to apply to this passage. Luke 14, 12 through 14. Yeah, that parable. Or that teaching. It's great. All right. Good. What else do I have up here? And why should I decide to live like this? What's the motivation to live like this? Because this is not normal. It's not usual. It's not what the world is going to message us to do. Why live like this? Faith that God is in control. Right? There's more than life under the sun. This is life with God in control. And that's why I choose to live like this. And that's what this is. Choose to live this way. Great. Great. All right, then he has this next exhortation. Give a serving to 7 and also to 8, for you do not know what evil will be on the earth. All right, in light of chapter 1 through 10, what's this little thing about? And what does that look like in some practical way? So why don't we answer that first question first. What is this about? Give a serving to 7 and also to 8, for you don't know what evil will be on the earth. Give a serving to 7, also to 8. Good way to put it. Don't hold back. When the Bible does this thing of 7, yea, 8, God hates 6, yea, he hates 7, what does that tend to suggest? Run 10 yards. Yay, 12 yards. What am I saying? Keep going. Yeah, it's a way to express fullness of something, completeness of something. And that's the idea. And that's what he's calling to, right? So, serve 7. No, serve 8. Go for it. And that's the charge. Go for life. Don't hold back on this. Go for it. Jump in big. As big as you can, maybe bigger than you think you can. That's the charge, is to go for this. Invest fully all I have into this life of faith. So what does that look like on a practical level? What does that look like on a practical level? How have you seen that laid out on a practical level? Someone you've observed, a life witnessed, maybe some of your own experience. What does this actually look like? How many of you know somebody who sort of lives by the go big or go home mentality? Anybody know somebody like that? Go big or go home. Karen, who do you know like that? Okay, your son. Natalie, who do you know like that? Your dad, all right? Anybody else? Your buddy? Yeah. It's like, every time I can imitate buddies, I like to do that. Yeah. We know people, if they do something, they are all in on that thing. Right? They sort of have that personality. Go big or go home. That's kind of what this is, I think, calling us to do. And not in some caricature way, right? But in when I wake up in the morning, or when I go to bed at night and I'm thinking about the next morning, and I'm reflecting on my day and anticipating what tomorrow may be if the Lord gives it to me, where am I mentally? Am I all in on that? On giving myself to that? That's what this is calling me to do. Give a meal for 7, yea, 8. Okay, Mark, you're mulling, so let me know when you have something to say, because I can tell the gears are turning in there. So, yeah, thank you. Yeah, Tim?
You and I with the teens the other day were talking about Sons of Thunder,
Yeah,
and Peter comes to mind.
for
He
sure.
was kind of, whatever he did 108%, and
He did.
sometimes it bit him, but his zeal at the end was very beneficial and used by God.
Great. We talked about, with the Teen One group, 7th and 8th graders, the Sons of Thunder. Who were the Sons of Thunder? James and John. That suggests they're pretty fiery guys. Those are fiery guys. When you think of the Gospel of John and the epistles of John, what are the key words that come to mind in those epistles? Do you think fire, or what do you think? Love. You think love. You think love. Certainly in 1 John, you think love. So what transformed John into a man of thunder and calling down fire on the enemies of Jesus, which he did, right, to the gospel, to the apostle of love? Well, Jesus changed that. Do what? Well, Isle of Patmos could have helped that one. But Jesus changed him. So he was all in. But Jesus formed him to be the kind of all-in, active life that he needed him to be. And John became that in a very unique way. So that kind of real aggressive, live life strong personality can be very dangerous. It can be very good. And this verse in Ecclesiastes is calling for us to be that and do it in a very good way. And why? The days you do not know what evil will be on the earth. What's the point of that? What's the point of that? Why speak of evil on the earth? Yep. This book has shown a lot of that, right? This book has shown a lot of that. The righteous man's life can be cut off early. The wicked man's life can go a long, long time. While you have life to live, live it. That's what he's saying. And live it strong. Don't hold yourself back. And lots of things can hold us back. I'm going to get to that in the next couple of verses. Lots of things are there to cause us to want to hold back. Choose to live and live full. Because you only have so much time. And it may be shorter than we think. There may be something come along that cuts off what I'm able to do now. I may not be able to do next month. You never know. At some point, that happens to all of us. Tim?
I just really keep focusing at my mind, sorry about that, on verse 6. In the morning sow your seed, at the evening withhold not your hand.
Yep.
So just keep sowing.
That's right.
Just keep going.
And it's that same principle. That's right. Yeah, and you're wise to do that, by the way, Tim. These verses are not siloed, separate from each other. These verses, this is one constant conversation. So it's very helpful to jump from a verse that we haven't got to yet or verses that have already passed. What is Ephesians 5:16 that speaks to it?
Redeeming the time because the days are evil.
Good. Redeem the time because the days are evil. Right. Thanks, Harley. Yeah, redeem the time. Nothing new in that verse, right? Paul's saying something that was said long ago in Ecclesiastes.
If we're talking about practicality, sometimes when you start a conversation with someone who's having a troubled life and you try to help them through the things that have happened to them and give them an attitude to be more like Christ, and you're telling them what to do, and then that goes along for a while, and then they have troubles again, and I mean, it might look like absolutely spending the rest of your life helping this person get through theirs. Mm-hmm. And that's hard, and it's tedious, and it's sometimes you just think, oh man, I don't want to answer this phone call, or
Yeah.
but that's what, if you can do that, if you would just put your mind to doing it, it can make a big difference in at least one person's life.
Okay. I remember someone you all were helping a number of years ago, and I walked in to eat at work one day, and this person worked at the college over there, and I saw Tim sitting at a table with this person one-on-one, and I knew what Tim was doing. I knew he was helping that person who had a lot of really hard things to overcome, and took a long time. Made a dramatic difference in that life, but I knew Tim was in the middle of doing hard work. But I've never even told him that, but I remember seeing it and said, I know what that guy's up to. He's doing some eldering on his lunch hour. That's what he's doing. And that's what this verse calls us to do. You good? No, okay. Well, let me know. Never mind. All right, number 3, verse 3. Thanks, Josh. Verse 3. If the clouds are full of rain, they empty themselves upon the earth, and if a tree falls to the south or the north, in the place where the tree falls, there it shall lie. He who observes the wind will not sow, and he who regards the clouds will not reap. All right, like I asked them before, just explain this. The clouds are full of rain. They empty themselves. Seems like obvious statements. If a tree falls, it's going to lay there. Thank you. So what's the point of that, Gary?
Just was thinking some things happen, so you better deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah, good. Life just happens, and we're going to have to deal with it. Right. So understand that. And we can deal with it. Why can we deal with it? Because we're walking faith, right? Because God is in control. That's why we can deal with it. That's right. Some things may be predictable. If I see a storm coming, maybe I can plan for that. Close the windows, get whatever ready. Some things may be unpredictable. That tree fell down, didn't know it was falling. Where it's going to fall? North, south, it just fell. Okay, well, we can deal with it because we act in faith, because we live by faith. And that just is what is just part of life. Maybe it's talking about difficulties, like a storm coming through, maybe, which are sudden, some of which are not. The point is we can't control them. And so our refuge in all of that is that God is in control. Yeah, there we go. That I was trying to get to. Most things I can't control, so decide to act on what I can. That's his point. I can control very little. Very little. But God's given me control of something. And I can control that. What am I going to do with my life? And when storm comes, or something falls over and breaks, what do I do? Well, I can control what I do. I can control what I say. I control what I think or what I don't say. And that I can do. And he's telling me to step into that, lean into that. Because my refuge in all hardships is the creator of the world in which I live, right? And he's in control. And he's going to be in control. All right, any comments or questions at this point? Yeah, Tim?
Sorry, I don't mean to hog the whatever.
No, you're good.
Well, verse 4.
Yes,
So
you're in control.
if you're constantly observing the wind and the clouds, I mean, the timidity may drive you to do nothing.
Yep.
Okay, there might be a chance of rain. I'm not going to do anything. Too windy. I'm not going to do anything.
Yep.
So but you have to balance wisdom.
Right.
So that's the key. God, use the wisdom God gave us, make good choices, but keep pushing on and if you wait forever, it may never happen, that kind of thing.
Right, good. And that balance is very important. This whole idea of jump into the day, live life fully doesn't mean you're foolhardy about it. Right? Doesn't mean I'm naive or just dumb about things. But it does mean I act. Yeah, great. Arlene?
I think one thing that we've learned in the wisdom in the previous 10 chapters is that we learn with experience. Yep. And we know that certain things are going to happen, and we need to be preparing for those things and have a plan in place.
Good.
This going around acting like chickens with our heads cut off type thing every time there's something that pops up is foolishness. Mm-hmm. So wisdom and age really, if we learn from previous experiences, then we can have a plan in place, and we're not rattled the way we were the first time it happened.
Okay. Right, good. We do learn and we do grow. Yeah, Mark?
Yet the danger of waiting for ideal circumstances or what you consider to be, that's not a good time to talk to them yet. I'll wait another time. And this chapter seems to be like you need to seize now and you need to press your points. And I think like in talking to people about their soul, you need to ask the next question. A lot of times we don't ask the next question. We're put off too easy. We get what we consider to be, man, that was a hard no they just gave me. We need to come back. And I like what one mom said to me. She was worried about her son, and she says, and he's telling me now, don't worry about me, Mom. And she says, and I'm not going to give up so easily.
Right.
And I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Good. Good. Yeah, that's right. The title of this lesson was Seize the Day. That's how Wilson Adams titled this lesson. I almost put a little screenshot of Newsies up there. How many of you know that reference? I don't know, but a lot of you do. Okay. And that has maybe some value in it, but that's sort of the point, right? Step into this and step into this. Some of us like to have the plan sort of more laid out and clear before us before we step into that. I don't know if any of you are like that. I'm kind of like that. I kind of like to see what the ground has before me. And there's some wisdom in that. Right? There's wisdom in that. But that can make you hold back, right? And say, well, I don't know what's there, so I'm going to wait. And then wait. And then wait. Right? And that's not good. That leads to a lot of bad things. And there are some who don't care what's in front of them. They're just going to woo, and that can be bad too, right? There's a balance there. It's like this proverb, Proverbs 22 and Proverbs 26, kind of say almost the same thing. The sluggard says, there's a lion outside, I should be killed in the streets. There's always a reason not to work today. There's always a reason not to go to class, not to talk to somebody, right? There's always a potential danger in something that has any potential value in it almost at all. There's going to be some potential risk in that. And I've got to step through that. Great. All right, any other comment or question, what we talked about so far? All right, this is a question for the book. Oh, yeah, good. Amy.
Sorry, I'm thinking about my workplace right now because at work there are people who are, when they're working on a project, they're ready, aim, fire, right? And then you have the people that are ready, fire, aim.
Yep.
And there's a risk in both of those scenarios. And I think a lot of times we take comfort in assessing a risk or knowing what the risk is, or I think sometimes we put too much weight on what is the risk. And I think God calls us to take calculated steps, but to leave the risk part in his hands, and that's part of what trusting him is. If we're making a decision with the best information that we have in that moment, and it's guided by godly principles, then we can let go of our need to control the risk factor.
Right. Good. Great. All right, was there another? Oh, yeah, Seth. Good.
Sorry.
Don't you apologize.
Just going over these verses specifically remind me, if you listen to any motivational videos in the last 10 years, you'll definitely have heard Will Smith or one of those type, and where they say, just decide and the universe will get out of your way. That's earthly wisdom right there. And you'll hear it echoed by dozens and dozens of most of them.
Yeah.
As soon as you decide, everything else is going to part like the seas.
Right.
And that's the visualization they're giving people.
Right.
And then anybody who's over 5 has experienced that's not life.
It's not true. Right.
The tree's going to fall and it's going to stay there. You have to figure out a way to get around it.
Yep.
It's not going to move for you. And the exact opposite of what that wisdom is.
That's right.
Now what? Now what are you going to do? It's going to keep falling. More trees are going to fall. More bad things are going to happen no matter what. You've just got to figure out a way around it.
That's right. Great point. There's a danger in this kind of lesson becoming a motivational seminar, right? Seize the day and rally and woohoo, I leave this thing feeling all pepped up. That's not what this is, right? This isn't some kind of well-hyped, well-marketed motivational speech in Ecclesiastes. This is something sober, and it is motivational, and it should give us confidence in it, but it's not some kind of, it's not a Broadway musical rousing number. That's not what this is. Steve?
Todd, there's 3 kinds of risks in life. It's ridiculous risk that most of us will never take is jumping out of an airplane without a parachute, right? That's silly. Then there's calculated risk where you jump out of an airplane with a parachute that you packed, right? That's calculated. The third kind of risk is when you sit down in the seat in an airplane and you ask the Lord to be with the pilot that's piloting you, and that's God risk, and that's the kind I like because I can trust in that. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So that's the kind of trust I like.
I like to just stay on the ground personally, but yeah, I get it. I get it. And that's right. That's right. Good. All right. What else we had? He asked a question. I thought I typed it up here, but I didn't. Oh yeah, no, this is the question. Yeah, we just haven't got to it yet. Multiple studies show that those who retire and don't have any other work they do, whether they re-enter the workforce, have some other kind of effort they're involved in, tend to die earlier. That's interesting. Briefly, from Ecclesiastes, why is that? What might lead to that? Bill, did you have your hand up or you were just... Okay. Up here, Harley. Because the wife kills him. Bill Eskin up here. Well, that's possible.
Well, Ecclesiastes does not put work in a negative light.
Right.
Nor does the rest of Scriptures.
No.
You go to the book of Genesis, and the very first thing after Adam was created, he was given a task to perform. So work is a duty and also a privilege assigned by God in a perfected world. And I think if we have this vision that I've done my job and now I'm going to have real paradise by sitting back and resting and not doing anything, that is a God-less vision.
That's right.
And it doesn't align with the way he created us. And so I think many people, you lose purpose.
That's right.
You have a purposeless existence, and that's not existence. That's not living. And your body is not designed to respond well to that.
Right. Very well said. We are made to carry a load. We are designed to push a weight. Physically, but more importantly, emotionally and mentally. That's how we are designed. And Bill said it exactly right. In paradise, we had work to do, and because that's what we're designed for. We are not designed to live a life of inactivity and ease. We are designed to use what God gives to us emotionally and physically and mentally to work. And that's what this is calling us to do. And when we don't do that, that is really unhealthy for us. You want to hurt a kid, remove the weight from their life. They need, and I don't mean this in, obviously there's judgment here. I trust you all know what I'm saying here. If you so overprotect your kid that they don't bear weight emotionally or socially, that's bad for them. And so we need it. And they need to be able to bear that and learn how to bear that. And it grows us and it matures us greatly. Was there a question here and here? Tim first, then Mark.
Mine's just not a question, but the two shovels in the barn and the one people know have been used because it's sharp and shiny.
Okay.
The one that's not used is rusted. But it is the abrasion, it's the constant use keeps us sharp.
Right.
So otherwise, we go to waste.
Good. Mark?
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I talked to a cardiologist from Fort Myers, and he was the guy that put people's hearts together that blew up, like there was no book on it. And he would go in there, and he was the guy called in. And he said if he could get a sense who trusted him, who did not, who wanted to live. He said, Mark, there's some weird things that happen in operating rooms. The people you expect to live die. People don't have a chance live. And a lot of it came down to faith and trust, and did they have a reason to live?
Yeah. Who's the Frankl? Thank you, Viktor Frankl wrote this really great book, and he speaks of surviving in the concentration camps that he survived in. The people who survived the best were those who had a purpose. Ecclesiastes reminds us of our purpose. It's something so beyond us and so beyond here, and we have that purpose, then we work at it. And that's what this is calling us to do. My granddad retired early. He retired at 58. He was an engineer for Procter & Gamble his whole career. And his line, I learned a lot from this guy, was, I don't want to give all my best years to Procter & Gamble. So he did well, he saved well, he gave well, but he retired early. But he did not quit. He was busy until he got too sick to be busy. He was on boards of various organizations. He was an elder and spent a lot of time as basically a full-time elder, kind of just eldering a lot. And I learned watching him that when you retire, you stay busy, and he did. And he really just gave himself as he could. I think of him when I think of this some of these principles here in Ecclesiastes 11. All right, we'll finish up. If you have that card with a question or a thought or something to pursue, I'd love to get that back. So please get that to me or any of these guys helping. And anybody will get it to me. And we'll try to address some of your questions before the end of the semester.